But back home in the state of Idaho, a few things that we want to talk about. I think one thing that was driving people to the polls alongside the presidential race was Proposition 1. And Proposition 1, Justin, is something that, as you can see on the screen now, it wasn't particularly close. 70% of Idahoans voted no on that, about 80% reporting here, but you can see the check mark. There's not a mathematical way for Proposition 1 to pass.
Now, this is something, this was sort of the big question on the ballot here in Idaho. A lot of the races were presumptive. You know, you expected red pretty much across the board. Did you expect it to be a blowout like this, or the fact that it really became more of a partisan issue with Republicans coming out against it, seemingly Democrats being for it, that it sort of signaled to voters, again, this is a Republican-dominant state, signaled to those conservative voters that it's like, I got to vote against this?
I think there's a combination of things, and we'll find out as we interview voters in the coming days and weeks. I did hear from Idahoans on what I would say both sides of the traditional political spectrum that they did not like the idea because of the two different parts of Proposition 1. So I think one thing that I heard from voters was that they liked the idea of the open primary. Ranked choice voting, though, was something that they were not, super interested in, so it was a no for them. I do want to agree with what you said, though. I think this did become such a talking point for Idaho Republicans across the state of Idaho that we need to vote no on Proposition 1. And you can understand from the hold that the Republican Party has on Idaho, Proposition 1 would have likely taken a hit on that, and it would have changed the way that elections worked in Idaho, such to a significant extent that some of the strongholds or some of the swing districts, it would be more difficult for certain Republicans to win. So I think as you see the party and under Chair Dorothy Moon, you see the direction it's been moving over the last several years, you can understand why there was so much political pressure from the Idaho GOP and really all of their affiliated groups to push back against Proposition 1. I mean, they're protecting their political establishment. And whether you agree with Proposition 1 or not, you can understand why the Idaho Republican Party was so concentrated on protecting the establishment. I go back to what Dorothy Moon said. I think, and it's actually funny because you can go back 20, 25 years about the open primaries conversation in Idaho. It's the same talking point. But GOP Chair Dorothy Moon had said, BYU shouldn't be able to pick the quarterback for Boise State if they're playing football. So I think that's a talking point that did resonate with Republicans. And with so many Republicans that I spoke with that were excited to go vote for Donald Trump, this was kind of an added bonus to go out to the polls. I love talking to voters, and over the last several weeks I had spoken to self-described lifelong Republicans, and I asked them very genuinely, why do you think it's important for you to go to the polls if you know that Donald Trump's going to win the state of Idaho no matter what? And one of the gentlemen I spoke with, he said, that's why we do the votes. Is because we can't just listen to polls. We can't just guess who's going to win. I wanted to show up and I wanted to vote for who I want to be president. And I really appreciated that answer because somebody had said that in an interview on our show earlier tonight that you have these rights, and if you're not utilizing them, that's how you lose them.